Afternoon to the Distinguished Events National Monthly WebEx. This is Lisa Lodi, DE National Director for the Northeast and Southeast Division. Also me on this call is Jordan Montanino, the DE National Director for the West and Central Divisions, as well as Chris Pierce, National Vice President, and Catherine Henzelka, our Program Support Coordinator. Today's meeting is titled Location, 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 and we'll be talking about many aspects of choosing the perfect venue for your or social event. Presentation is a WebEx where staff are muted automatically. If you have a specific question that you would like to ask, please type it in the chat window. If you have time to answer the questions during the WebEx, we will. If we don't have time, we'll answer the questions in fact sheet and send it out to everybody after the WebEx is completed. We are in this WebEx today, and we'll be posted on the Distinguished Events Resource Center so that you'll be able to go back and review it again or share it with other members of your staff if you see fit. I'm excited to share two very successful Distinguished Event Galas we do on today's WebEx. First, a huge congratulations to the Milwaukee Black and Blue Ball team for this year's ball, which took place on Friday, May 8th, and expected to net over $912,000. That's a record-breaking number, and one has so elevated the Black and Blue Ball into the #1 spot for MDA galas. The was up over $30,000 from 2014. The evening included over $800,000 in corporate sponsorship, $1,000 in the Send a Kid to Camp Drive appeal, a auction that raised $67,000, a side auction that raised over $113,000, and 310 guests who had a blast. Congratulations, Milwaukee. The Shuffle Team event took place on May 19th and is expected to net well over $400,000 for MDA. This was up $62,000 from 2014, $56,000 over business plan. For 2015, the MDA team took what they learned from the Distinguished Events best practices and strategies and work for their event. They had first-time sit-down dinner. They created better audio visual for their guests. They had a silent auction that was very accommodating to all of their guests for bidding, and a children's art auction. So congratulations to the Charlotte MDA District. Two great events of which we're very proud and want to offer our congratulations. We're excited to share with all of you that the Distinguished Events Resource Center has been redesigned. We've redesigned it in an effort to make the site easier to navigate, and items that you will be looking for are easier to find. We have a few more tabs with more information under each tab, and we hope that you will go to it and take some time to look for the materials that you are interested in seeing. If you ever have ideas or want other things that you think would help you or be beneficial on the Resource Center, please send either Jordan or myself an email, and we will try and accommodate that. But please take a look. I think you'll really think the new Resource Center is much easier to get around it. So the topic for discussion is the location of your event. Let's begin by talking about what you should know and look for when you're scouting for a venue. There are things that you need to consider for a venue for your gala. Remember that MDA is the customer in this situation, and that you have the right to ask for anything that you would like or that you will need from the venue for your event. It's negotiate one time. Know what you want to ask for and ask for it. Prepared the first time you go with it. Make a list. It's best if you don't keep going back and asking for more and more. Chances are you won't get everything you want. We recognize, though, that you may find yourself needing to go back more than one time. That is the case, don't be afraid. Again, remember, MDA is the customer here. Before you can determine the cost per person for your gala, you must know what the venue will cost and what your food and beverage will cost per person. You can create your budget for your event until you have these figures and divide them out per person. Many things in life, sometimes we don't always get what we want, and you can't always have your first choice in location. Just remember, maybe it's a location that you can go to, or you can grow into, or if you become very successful, and it is something you can consider. But like many things, we don't always get our first choice.
So we're going to talk about some of the things that you'll need to consider when you're looking for a location. And we're going to talk about accessibility. So all spaces that you are going to use within the venue must be ADA accessible. There really are no ifs, ands, or buts about this one. We simply cannot have an event at a venue that isn't 100% wheelchair accessible. Keep in mind that some older and historic buildings may not be up to ADA code because they were grandfathered in. So you want to pay particular attention to the accessibility if you're considering a historic venue. We're going to talk about maximum capacity. So you want to make sure that you're asking the venue spokesperson what the maximum capacity is for your seated dinner, or that you may want to grow your event into this venue in future years. So if you're planning to have 300 people at your event this year, you may not want to choose a venue that is only able to seat 300 people, or the potential that you'd have to change the venue the following year. To stop just with your seated dinner, we need to know all of the other areas that you're going to need for your event, including the VIP reception space. So although we don't have as many people in the VIP reception space as we do at the main event, it's important to have a nice space where people can mix and mingle, and where you can do either passed hors d'oeuvres or food stations. And so in that case, you'll want to know what the standing capacity is in that room. And also be similar for the main cocktail reception. So you'll know what the standing capacity is there as well. And this is a really important area because you're going to need ample space for your silent auctions and other revenue enhancers. And needless to say, we make quite a bit of our money from our silent auctions and revenue enhancers, so we need people to be able to easily access the silent auction tables without creating bottlenecks. And we'll look at some pictures of that in a couple of slides. You'll also need space for a number of different areas, including everything that is listed here on this list. So everything from your guest reception all the way down to having MDA office space and a volunteer room, ample space for auction checkout, etc. Checkout in particular is one of the busier areas at your event. You'll want to make sure to have plenty of space to organize your items by winning bid number. Plus, you'll need space for all of your volunteers, including the frontline people and your runners, so that people can pick up and help deliver items out to people's cars. And this is the MDA office. This should really be a private area for MDA staff only. And you're going to have your main Maestro computer and printer being housed there. And so a lot of data entry, important data entry, is going to be happening in that room. You can also have all of your setup supplies and special things that you need during your event there. So you'll want to make sure that there is room to have an MDA office and that it is quiet space. But certainly not least is having space for your volunteers to meet and receive any last-minute instructions, training, and then eat as well if you're supplying them any food or drink. To walk through each of these different spaces when you're considering a venue. going to take a look at what is included and what you're going to need to consider when you are negotiating the contract at your venue. First thing I want to say here is to please keep in mind that everything is negotiable and that MDA is the customer here. It can be a little bit uncomfortable for some people, but just remember that in the end, MDA is paying this invoice. And in many cases, an invoice for a substantial amount of money. So think about everything that you want and that you need to ask for when you're looking at a venue. So those things include the basics like tables, chairs, linens, basic decor, etc. And that will be both for the dinner area, for your seated dinner, as well as any silent auction tables and linens that you need. If you think of everything in advance, make yourself a list. That way you won't forget anything when you're negotiating. And then also having an on-site event manager, as well as the banquet captain and in some cases a bar manager. It's really good to know who you're working with before the event and who your contact people are going to be for the night of the event. So I recommend that you meet those people in advance and that you also get their cell phone numbers so that you have a way of contacting them. Also ask for the venue to donate some items to your event as well. So if you hotel, for example, you could ask for hotel miles or points. You negotiate down the price per table. You could ask for a live auction item, discount hotel room rates, or cases of wine for the wine pool. So don't take anything off the table. Ask for everything that you want, and then the worst thing that can happen is that the venue can say no to some of the items, but hopefully you'll get some of what you're looking for as well. I'm going to talk about food and beverage minimums, and this is something that's important to understand. This is the amount of food and or beverage that you must order from the venue pre-tax and gratuity. What you will often see is that you must meet a food and beverage minimum in order to get things like the cost of that particular room being donated to you. So when assessing the food and beverage minimums, consider asking if you're able to bring in donated food or liquor to the location. In some cases, you may be able to do this. In other cases, you may not be able to do this. Next, we're going to look at cost per person. Knowing that cost per person, as Lisa said earlier, it's going to be really important to set your sponsorship levels so that we're making money every single level and off of every single person at the event. And so things you're going to need to include when factoring out what our cost per person is going to be include your hors d'oeuvres, they're passed or at stations, alcohol for the cocktail reception and dinner. And alcohol is often charged a couple of different ways. It can be a per person charge, which is usually for the premium liquor, or it can be based on consumption. You can also negotiate whether or not, as I mentioned before, you can bring in donated wine or liquor to the venue, and if that is the case, there's often a corkage fee that is going to be associated with it. So you'll need to know what that corkage fee is. Dinner and dessert, which you will also need to know the tax for. Some states may be tax exempt, but others are not, and so you need to know your local tax when you're figuring that out. And service charges. So watch these costs. They can be anywhere from 18 to 25% on top of the hard cost for food and on top of the tax. Tier food. Are you able to bring that in? Is that something that you can get donated, or is that something that the venue is going to require for you to purchase through them? And if so, what is the cost going to be there? We'll talk about a few other location considerations on this next slide, starting with audio-visual. So are there any in-house inclusions? Do you have to work with the in-house AV company, or do you have the ability to bring in an outside vendor? If that's the case, you could certainly get quotes from multiple AV companies to find someone that has the best prices for you. I get a quote and menu of costs regardless of who you're going to be working with, whether it's the in-house person or an outside vendor. And know that having good AV is going to be important to the fundraising aspects of your event when it comes to your Mission Drive and live auction. Guests need to be able to hear and see what's going on, so your AV is really important. Keep in mind you're going to need a little bit of room for that tech table and an area for them to run all the audio and visual the night of. Next, Wi-Fi and cellular service. So check with the venue regarding their Wi-Fi and cellular phone service. You ask them about the strength of the signal for the different services, but then above and beyond that, we suggest that you actually go to the site and test the services yourself, particularly if you're considering doing something like text to bid. You need to make sure that it's going to work. And you'll want to find out if there is a cost for that Wi-Fi or to set up your computers. Valet parking and or other parking at your event. So you want to determine amongst yourselves whether or not valet parking is something that you want to offer for the event, and also whether or not that's available at the venue and what the charge would be for that service. Valet parking can be pricey. I've seen it as high as $25 to $50 per car, depending on the city. Remember that this is also an exclusive underwriting sponsorship that you can turn around and sell. So maybe if that is the case, that you are able to offer valet parking. But beyond valet, you'll also want to find out what the parking situation is otherwise for your guests so that you can clearly state that on your invitation and in that final pre-event newsletter that you send to your guests. And make sure that you have parking available for your volunteers as well, and you'll need to communicate to them if you're not having them at valet, for example. If they're going to be in another lot, they need to know that that's where they're going to park. Set up and tear down. So you'll want to determine with the venue when you can begin setting up for the event, and then when you need to be out of the venue once the event is over. Sometimes if you start too early or if you finish too late, they may charge you additional fees. So that's something you'll want to find out ahead of time for sure. Next slide on location considerations. So we're talking about some extras here. So is there security on the premise? And if so, is there a cost associated with that? Some venues require you to have security. It's rare, but not unheard of, so you'll want to ask. And the ability to have wait staff know where your top sponsor tables are located so that they can make sure that those tables are served earlier than some of the others. And then extra linens for your silent auction merchandising. If you can get those linens and even potentially milk crates that you can turn upside down and put linens on top of to create some height in your auction, that's also a nice thing to have. And then corporate sponsorships. Most of the things that you're going to be charged for at your venue, you turn into corporate sponsorship or exclusive underwriting opportunities. So we are able to include things like the VIP reception and valet parking or coat checks as an example, so that we get the cost covered ahead of time. We're going to switch topics here a little bit now, and we're going to talk about what you need to know when you're looking at the contract for your venue. And first, we're going to talk about the payment schedule. So you'll want to read your contract closely to find out what the payment schedule is, as each venue is different. So most venues are going to require a deposit up front in order to hold the date. And that deposit is usually based on a percentage of the estimated bill. For example, they may ask for a 25% deposit to start, and they may ask for an additional deposit prior to the event to bring you up to a total of 50% of the estimated bill. And then full balance. As I just said, all venues are different, but if at all possible, we try to negotiate that we will pay the full balance with 30 days after the event. And again, you'll need to read your contract to get the specifics, and then make sure to put these important dates onto your timeline so that you remember to do that check request in advance, because that process takes a little bit of time and we want to make sure to pay our venues on time. Next, we're going to be talking about the guarantee for the number of guests. So all venues will require for you to give them a final guest count or a quote-unquote guarantee prior to the event. And this is so they know how much food to order and how many banquet staff they will need to adequately cover the event. So again, you'll need to read your contract to find out how many days in advance of the event you need to give that final guarantee. Typically, you'll see that the venue needs between 4 to 7 days so that the chefs have enough time to order and prepare the food. And it's important to remember that even if you have less guests that show up that night, you're going to pay based on the guarantee that you gave in advance of the event. Fortunately, a lot of people don't have a really solid plan for getting those RSVPs in advance, and when this happens, you can end up paying hundreds and even thousands of dollars in food for guests that didn't attend. And therefore, it's really important to work with your committee and your sponsors to get as many names as possible in advance of that guarantee date so that you can give your best estimate of how many people will actually be in attendance and not over-order food for the night of. Next, we're going to look at the cancellation policy. So as with the above, again, you're going to need to read your contract cancellation policy carefully so that you know the specifics. Do they allow you to cancel in full? If so, how many days in advance of the event? 180? Sometimes the cancellation policy will state that in certain circumstances, we can apply our deposit towards an event at a future date. If so, we need to know when the drop dead date is so that we make sure to cancel in time. But oftentimes, regardless of when you cancel, we are obligated to pay a percentage of the estimate that we gave or allow them to keep the deposits that we've made up to that point. It's so critical that we not sign a contract unless we're 100% confident that it's a good investment of MDA's money and that we're going to have a successful event. And then last but certainly not least, just a friendly reminder here that all contracts and insurance must be approved by MDA's legal department. So please work with your divisional director and DOD/DOC to process and send the legal department the full contracts with necessary paperwork. And then legal will then work with you and or the venue to make any changes that they see fit to the contract verbiage. You'll also need to read the contract to find out if the location is asking to be listed as additionally insured. And if they are, you'll want to make sure to note that when you send in your paperwork. Okay, so next we're going to talk about building your budget. So assuming at this point that you've chosen your venue, you have looked through the contract, and you've made sure that you know what all of those costs are going to be, and then you need to decide, is this something that is going to be affordable for us? Before moving forward with that venue, it's important to know what the total cost and the cost per person is going to be to ensure that it's within your budget. So once you have the actual expenses for an event, you're going to track all of that in Maestrosoft. I know you know that, but during these preliminary stages of choosing that venue and narrowing down those venues, we recommend putting a sample budget together so you can see the projected costs. So look at the example on this slide. We obviously didn't list every single line item that you're going to have for the event. We only give you a few of the major examples. In particular, we want to point out that when you're projecting food costs, you'll need to be aware of what plus means. Plus stands for plus tax and plus gratuity. So if you look at this first line item here for dinner, we are seeing that it's $4 per person plus. This example, we used 8.5% tax, but each state has different taxes, so you'll need to find out your state's tax rate. And then plus is for the gratuity and service fees, and it's typical to see those anywhere from 17 to 25%, which really adds up when you're talking about hundreds of guests. And you'll see that in this example, we used 20% gratuity and service. So you'll see that in total, that meant that $46 plus came to a total of $59, a little over $59 per person. Multiply 250 people meant that our food cost was going to be a little over $14,000. Make sure when you're putting your budget together that you're keeping in mind that expenses cannot be higher than 25% for your event. So if we were using a $100,000 net event as the model, that would mean that our expenses could not be any higher than $33,000. So if we were looking to choose our venue with this budget as our example, we are little over $28,000 when we include all of the major expenses. So that leaves us a cushion of a little less than $5,000. We should be able, in this case, to stay within our 25% budget and work with this venue.
All right. Before you actually sign a contract or send this contract off to that B for signature, what do you need to do? You need to carefully review the contract as well as the floor plan with your ED, DD, and your national director to ensure that there's adequate room to host both the auction, your revenue enhancers, your cocktail time, your VIP reception, and your seated dinner. When you go to your venue and you meet with them for the first time, you should automatically ask for some blank floor plans from them. Every venue, every hotel has them. Some of the bigger venues may even have them online, but ask for a floor plan that you can take back to the office with you so that you can be reminded of what the space looks like, and you can then do some drawing in of tables and areas that you think you want to put during your event. We had 400 seated guests is not for 400 bidders. And what it means is you will need as much space for your auction area as you do for your dinner tables. And all of your dinner tables and the places where you have all of your guests seated, you need to have that much space for your silent auction and revenue enhancers as well. What you should do, again, before you sign any contract, is draw a path for your crowd beginning at the front door. Walk in the front door, where do they go first? They go to guest registration. After guest registration, where do they go? So is there room for your registration tables? Catch your silent auction tables in the room rather than up against the wall. Our best practice I know is that we have our silent auction tables so that guests can look at items from both sides, so we don't have them pushed up against the wall. 6 people stood together chatting. Others get to the auction items to bid on. In a cohesive looking area. Can you move the crowd from the auction or the pre-function cocktail reception area to dinner quickly? Is clear line of sight once you get all of your dinner guests seated for the stage. It's visible to see and hear. These are all questions that you need to think about when you're thinking about the venue before you sign the contract. Here are pictures of a guest registration. Guest registration is the first contact that you will have with your guests. Their first impression of our event. Here are photos that show a well-marked registration area. Guests really can't miss the large sign that's above height level, and with some smaller signs placed on the floor that say guest registration. You will see that there are many volunteers, each with their own space, ready to register guests when they walk out. When scouting a potential venue, you really need to think about how many guests you're going to be having at your event and where you're going to be having guest registration. It should open for business. Here we have cocktail reception, and you can see the woman in the purple dress, the woman in the black dress. There's still room for them to walk around and bid. It's a busy reception, and there's a balance between having a room that is comfortably crowded and one is either too crowded where it's miserable to walk around in, or you have a venue that's so big you're using just a portion of their space that it looks like, oh, we're not at a successful event. There aren't many people here. So there's a real delicate balance you have to take consideration and think about when you're looking at these venues. Will you have barriers to bidding? We talked about having auction items that be able to be bid on both sides, but they have velvet ropes in front of them in the beginning. But if you have a number of people, a group of 3 or 6 people who are standing in the pathway to get to those items, that's going to be a barrier, and then people aren't going to want to get down there, or they're not going to make it their priority to push those people to bid. So think about what's happening in every place of the venue and have more than just yourself look at them. Talk through it with people in your office. Will your barriers and bottlenecks? Here you have 2 different sets for auctions, and you can see the U shape or the top picture. And again, you can't get too many people down that if you have people that are standing at the front of it. Not ideal. The other area is up against the wall. Again, not a best practice. Venues, you're forced to do that, and you have to figure out how to make the best of it. But everything is pushed up against the wall.
As we talked about earlier with the audio and visual, you make sure that your guests have a full view of the evening program. So whether you're the people that are sitting in the front row that can actually see exactly what's happening right there on stage, or whether, like in the case of the picture on the left, you're the people that are sitting anywhere from 7 to 10 rows back, they need to feel like they're a part of what's happening on the stage, particularly when you are doing your mission drive and your live auction. So make sure that the guests, no matter where they are seated in the room, have a really good view of the evening program so that they feel a part of what's happening on stage, and so that they participate. We make sure that they don't start chatting amongst themselves at their tables, and the way to avoid that is by making sure that they can clearly see and hear exactly what's happening on stage. And here you'll see an example of a great floor plan, and I believe that this is the floor plan from the Milwaukee Black and Blue Ball, where they have 1,300 people that are in the room that night. So it's difficult, as you can imagine, to make sure that everyone can see really well. And so what they do in that case is they actually do a theater in the round, and they have their stage right in the center of the room, so that no one is any farther than 5 rows back from that stage, which makes everyone feel like they're part of the action and they're close to what's going on. And then you'll see in the picture on the left, there's a very large screen there, so that, again, like the pictures on the previous slide, people are able to see what's happening on stage, and they're able to hear the speakers and the stories that they're telling leading into our mission drives, which is really important for maximizing your fundraising night of. And so we're just going to take a quick look here at a couple of event floor plans, and we're going to start with the floor plan from the Houston Passport to a Cure event. And what we want to point out on here is that they've really mapped out every single area of the event. So if you start at the bottom portion of what's up on the screen now, you'll see where it says guest registration. So where the guests are first entering, and to the right of that, you'll see that they have their step and repeat. So as soon as they've registered, they go and take their photos, and they walk through the doors right there. And we'll immediately see auction in the center of the room, along with the stage where they have different entertainers performing throughout the cocktail reception. If you look along the perimeters, there's ample space for all of the other revenue enhancers that are taking place as well. So everything from the kids' art gallery to the wine toss, to the character tents, to the concessions. Everything has its own space. You'll see if you look more carefully at those auction tables that they have serpentine tables. So they're actually curved, and so guests are able to go and bid on either side of those tables. Because the stage is right there where entertainment is happening, it's also an attraction. It's an area that guests are drawn to, and that's what you want and exactly where you want to place your silent auction, where the action is happening. You want to be a focal point of the room so that as guests are standing there watching the entertainment, they can also glance down at the silent auction tables and be placing bids. If you look on the left-hand side of the diagram here, you'll see where the dinner takes place. So the very large stage at the front of the room. There are no more than 5 to 6 rows of tables so that everyone is able to be fairly close to the stage. And they do also have the very large screens that are shown so that everyone feels a part of the action. So it's a really well thought out and thorough diagram so that everyone can take a look and know exactly where everything is happening, and there's a good place for all of our different revenue streams night of. Lisa for Milwaukee.
The plan is from the Milwaukee Black and Blue Ball, and I believe both of these, definitely the Milwaukee Black and Blue Ball, and just looking at the Houston floor plan, these are floor plans that are created by the venue. These are not floor plans that you as MDA staff have to draw up and try to figure out how to do on their computers. They will give you blank diagrams, and then you will work with the venue to fill in what is going to be where, and then they will give you and supply these maps and things for you. Another thing that venues will do will have volunteers setting up the day of the event is blow these maps up so that they're very large. I know at the Milwaukee Black and Ball they have several of them that are probably 3 feet by 3 feet that they put on easels so that people who are not familiar, volunteers setting up with where everything is going, they have to find a staff person to ask. They can look at the map. Go to the bottom of this floor plan, you'll see that the main rotunda area is where all of the guests enter. And then right in front of the visitor center, again, is the guest registration area. It's the first thing all the guests see when they walk through the doors. And then down the left-hand side of the building, back to room with the little round tables is the VIP reception. So it's a private area. It's away from the main area, and it's a little bit more VIP-ish. And then as the guests walk down the main corridor of the pre-function area to the right of guest registration, that's where you'll see all of the revenue enhancers set up. The motorcycle raffle, the wine pull, the children's art auction. As you go down further, you'll see that there's the boot shine and the gift card grab, the photo shoot. Those are the revenue enhancers, so the guests need to walk by them. As you look up the right side of the map, the floor plan, those are all of the silent auction tables. This is space that isn't ideal for silent auction. We don't have the capability to pull the tables out and have people walking on both sides, but it's not big, deep squares, so you can get many people into these squares. So again, you have to work with the venue that you find to be your best suited venue to make all of the things fit. As Jordan said, you can see in the where all the tables are in the table, the stage in the middle of the theater round. There's a checkout area that's a very large portion of this time as well, and that is not only the auction checkout room, but also the volunteer room where the volunteers store their coats, and also MDA in the corner has their private office where they have their Maestro computers and where all of the important things happen and the decisions are made at the event. The next thing that we're going to do is Catherine is going to take us through a Maestro moment.
Yes, I will. So I'm going to open up Auction Maestro Pro, and we're going to just briefly talk about set up your tables for the event, and I'm going to show you a few reports that are going to be you're going to be able to get from setting up. So doesn't want to let me open it. I'm going to stop sharing for just 1 second. Besides error message, I'm sharing a couple things right now. Share my screen with you guys. So I'm going to pull up Maestro, and Lisa and Jordan, since you guys are unmuted, let me know when you, well. I cannot apologize. I had it up right before the call. Okay, sorry about that. So we've talked a lot about entering people on previous calls, and something you're going to get to pretty close to that. It's going to be sitting all these people at tables. So anybody that you're going to want to sit at a table, just make sure that you have all the information entered under 3-in-1 in these people records. I'll show you how, when you're putting people in, once they have a table, you can seat them. But really quickly, under 4-in-1 is where you're going to set up your tables. And I'm using Houston here, so you can see when they sell tables, this is where they're going to go, and they're going to enter that, they sold this table in Anheuser-Busch. It was a sponsored table. There's going to be 10 people sitting at this table. This table was part of a sponsorship, so it's not showing a cost associated with it. And they also put in the tax-deductible portion per person. Companies like, in this example, Glazer, they just purchased a table. It was not part of their sponsorship, so you can see here that they have a table cost associated with that. But this is where you're going to go. It will auto-populate table numbers as you put them in, but that is something that you can clear out and put in your own table numbers according to your floor plan, whatever works best for you. And also you can print invoices straight from here. I'll pull one up to show you what it looks like. Oh, that's just email out to your sponsors. So this has pictures, their address, that they're a table sponsor. You can change the name to whatever you want it to be, and that they have a balance due. And this can be emailed, this can be sent as a PDF, it can be exported to Word, just real quick and easy that you can send to people. I'll go back one more time. 4 and 1 is where you go to set up all of your tables. And you can also look and see on this table assignment changes, just a quick list once you seat people. That's a way that you can view how many people are going to be at those tables. I'm going to close out of here and show you when you are ready to start seating people at tables, you can go in 3 and 1 and find the guests that you've entered. It's going to be done on the second tab, the event registration. You can see right here, once we register them, you click primary to say that a guest is coming, and it populates down at the bottom that this primary guest is coming, and tell it where you want to seat it at a table. Once you have all your tables in there, it's going to list all your table names. If you've assigned a table captain, it will show you, and also tell you how many seats are available at that table. Since this season is finished, most of them are showing that there are 0 seats available because everybody had even seated at that table that's going to be there. If you get a number in parentheses, that's letting you know that you have too many people seated at that table. In this case, it may have been a 12-top table that got entered as a 10-top, but it'll just let you know how many seats are still available, so that way you're not seating too many people. Or Kroger has 3 tables, we don't want to sit them all at table 1. You're going to want to break them up into all 3 tables. So this is where you'll go, and the same can be done with the spouse. When you register them, you'll click on their record, and it's going to seat them together. So wherever, if they're not sitting together, they'll need their own records. But if you have a husband and a wife under one record, it's going to automatically seat them at the same table. So go to 4 and 1 to set up your tables, and 3 and 1 to seat people at their tables under their event registration tab. I'll close out of this and click under 7 and 1, just show you a few reports that you can get with table seating and for your guest list. So I love using the search feature at the top because, as you can see, there are tons of reports that can come out of Maestro. So I'm just going to type in table to limit myself to a few less reports. So you can get a registration list by table number. You can get an attendee check-in list to have your guest registration if you're going to be writing table numbers on their auction paddles or auction catalogs. Also, after the report, you can get after the event, you can get yield by table reports and different things that show you how much money was spent at that table. Also, there's several reports that tell you who doesn't have a seat, a seating table with attendees unassigned, or who quick checked at a table. If you have any notes that you're putting in Maestro, maybe somebody is allergic to seafood or somebody wants a vegetarian meal and you've entered that in the notes, the seating table report with notes will print that up. So I'll pull up really quickly the seating table report, and it just shows me at table 1, this is Anheuser-Busch table. They are the sponsor. There's 10 seats, and this is who's sitting in these 10 seats. See here, all of these people are couples. And so this table is completely full. It tells me right here at the bottom of that record. So for table 2, I see here that Rhonda is coming by herself. That's just one person here. So it'll let you know if it's a couple or single person. And if you have that person's information fully complete for their record, it even tells you what company these people are with. And then it's letting me know this table is full. That's just a few of the many reports you guys can get if you filter out here through table. And at the event, you'll have bidder numbers, you'll have amounts spent, so lots of good things used prior and after the event. If you need help with setting up your tables, or maybe you don't remember the difference between if one is purchased with a sponsorship and maybe one is purchased as a sponsorship, there's a few great training videos on the Microsoft.com. Goes over the difference in entering those tables and how you want to put in your data to make sure that it's not money where it shouldn't be. So with that being said, I will give it back to Lisa to close us out.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Participating in today's WebEx, well, that we covered a lot of information in the last 60 minutes. We're putting, as we said, this training up on the Distinguished Resource Center, hopefully within a couple days. We have another training coming up in 30 minutes where we're going to be talking about auctions and auction procurement. If anybody wants to join us, that call will start at 3 p.m. Central Time and go until 4 p.m. We're talking about auction and auction procurement. Our next DE National Monthly WebEx is scheduled for Tuesday, July 7th at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. The topic of that WebEx will be, can we have coffee? We'll be starting to discuss putting together a steering committee, adding steering committee members to an existing committee, but how to find the right people for our gala and distinguished event committees. Well, I don't know if you can tell Catherine if there's any questions in the chat. Otherwise, we will go a few minutes early.
We did not have any chat questions that we haven't answered.
Okay. Well, again, thank you very much, and we have a call at 3 p.m. Otherwise, we look forward to touching base with you next month. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.